This was a real case brought to the U.S. Supreme Court on June 29, 1972. 30-year-old petitioner William Henry Furman had been discovered burglarizing a home. When attempting to escape, his weapon went off and killed a resident in the house. He was then convicted of murder along with the attempted robbery and sentenced to death. We will now present the fictional trial for his sentencing. PSA, no one in this group is a lawyer, so please refrain from harshly criticizing any errors in the judicial process or incorrect addressing, etc. Thank you.
All rise for Justice Elena Kagan.
Thank you. Please have a seat. Ms. Brakovich, you may present your case.
Your Honor, under our Eighth Amendment, no citizen should endure cruel and unusual punishment. This kind of penalty may have been allowed back when people were being stoned and crucified, but under the Constitution, it seems absurd that we are even considering capital punishment.
May I interject?
Go ahead.
Capital punishment today is a much more humane solution in comparison to those mentioned. Lethal injection protocol does not allow for unnecessary infliction of pain. It is not torturous. Death comes within a matter of minutes. Therefore, I would argue that it is not a violation of the Eighth Amendment.
The Constitution also states that every man has the right to life, according to the 14th Amendment.
Objection. Your Honor, this should have been brought to the table in her initial statement.
I'll allow it. Please sit down, Mr. Gilbert. You may proceed.
This same amendment requires that defendants be warranted due process.
Due process allows the chance for the case to be opened back up if a new evidence is found or if the laws are changed so that the defendant can be released or given a shorter sentence.
And if the defendant is put to death, he loses that opportunity, that right. Since 1976, over 1,400 people have been put to death that may have been innocent, but there is no way of knowing it. Once someone is dead, any claim of innocence is merely shrugged off, and defense attorneys move on to other cases in which clients' lives can be saved. Innocent people are wrongly executed. Since 1973, 156 people have been released from death row based on insufficient evidence, and 10% have been wrongly accused altogether. I don't believe someone's life should be just tossed around with those statistics.
Unfortunately, Ms. Brakovich, I don't have any interest in what you believe, but I'll take your point.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Deontologists believe that morality is a matter of duty. We have a duty to do things that are right to do, and a duty not to do those things that are not right to do. Morality has not anything to do with the consequences of an action, but if the action is right or wrong in itself. Having mercy and compassion for people is my moral duty as a doctor. For this reason, it would be immoral for me to promote the death penalty, not because killing him might set a precedent to others to be put to death, but because I did not show mercy and compassion to him.
Virtue theorists base morality on the values one holds most important to them, based on experience and moral exemplars. A teacher in high school shaped the way that I think and the person that I am today. She taught me that kindness and patience were to be put before all else, and killing this man promotes neither of those ideals. For that reason, I am against capital punishment.
Emmanuel Levinas believes that we owe each other hospitality. Sharing resources amongst the human population is a requirement in living a good and full life. He preached that what is most valuable is not what we have, but what we give. Life is the ultimate gift, and having the opportunity to give a person a second chance and allow them that gift for however long they may naturally keep it is the duty of a person who follows this ideology. For that reason, I am against the death penalty. Gilbert, you have the floor if you would like to move forward with your case.
Justice Keegan, there are only 41 laws punishable by death, and all of them involve taking another human life, except for espionage and treason. This is not a decision that I have weighed lightly or used for trivial crimes. The death penalty is reserved for those who have committed heinous deeds.
And Furman's crimes are heinous?
Like you said, Your Honor, this is not my job to present my opinion. It's simply stating the facts. The rest is up to the purification process.
Bifurcation is the splitting of a trial into two parts. On one side, the prosecution tries to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant has committed the crime, and the other is to conclude a fair sentencing. In the first half, the jury is instructed to focus on whether the defendant is guilty and not what will happen afterward. This ensures that they are making decisions fairly, as the choice to impose the death penalty falls on the shoulders of the jury, not the judge, later in the case. After determining guilt or innocence is when the sentencing can occur. At this time, the defense poses their case for the jury to spare the life of the defendant, if the jury has decided to invoke capital punishment.
Does the defense have anything to add?
Yes. This theory of fairness seems ideal, but in reality, it doesn't always work that way. In fact, this platform is anti-poor and frankly discriminatory. According to a study conducted by a professor at the University of Washington, jurors are 4.5 times more likely to impose capital punishment on a black person than a Caucasian with similar charges.
Are these the only numbers you have?
No, Your Honor. There was also a study done by researchers at the University of North Carolina of 502 murder cases from 1993 to 1997. Results showed that defendants with white victims are almost 4 times more likely to be sentenced to death than those with cases involving non-white victims.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
The defense is leaving out important facts. If you look at the statistics for those on death row, her argument holds no value.
Do you have this information on hand?
I do. As of April 2017, 42.4% of inmates, the majority of those sentenced to death, are white. With 1,205 individuals across the nation, black inmates make up 41.6% and Latino only 13.2%. Along with that, the majority of exonerations.
Exoneration is when an inmate is released from capital punishment due to insufficient evidence or other factors.
Have been of color, with 84 out of 170 recorded releases.
With all due respect, we can't just ignore the fact that there's hard evidence showing discrimination in the judicial system.
I agree, Ms. Brockovich, but we are not arguing over the judicial system as a whole. We are speaking only to the issue of capital punishment. Please take your seats.
Relativists believe you can have more than one ethical standpoint for a situation depending on what you believe in. It doesn't have to be one just absolute standard. Whether the death penalty is ethically right depends on what standard you choose to follow. However, most standards would frown upon killing a person regardless of what they have done, unless you follow one in which you put yourself first to make you and only you happy. Killing this man would bring me no happiness and does not go along with my standards, so I am against the sentencing.
Social contract theory is the idea that something is moral based on whether it is upheld by the guidelines agreed upon by a society. In our society, death is negative and constantly pushed into the future with research for medical advancement, money for medical procedures and treatments, and even prayer. Furthermore, as a doctor, I took an oath to help every citizen from perishing, not just the ones I deem worthy. With this reasoning, I would not impose the death penalty on this man.
If I could please call to the stand Ms. Linnell Mickey. Ms. Mickey, do you have anything to say to the jury that might help with their decisions for the sentencing?
My husband was murdered, and I expect the perpetrator to be subjected to the same exact demise.
Lex talionis was a theory supported by Immanuel Kant. This is an eye for an eye mentality in which those who follow it believe punishment should exactly match the crime in kind and intensity. Kant supported his claim because it treats criminal as an end, as long as they are rational and autonomous. For this reason, he did not support the imposition of the theory of individuals with autonomy, such as those who are mentally disabled.
Vicky, my client suffers from several mental impairments. He has not been in good mental health since childhood and only received an education up to the 6th grade. So the processing of decision-making and taking action are not fully functioning. A person in this state of being subjected to this kind of sentencing would be considered cruel and unusual punishment.
And where is the data from that psychiatric evaluation to back that up, Ms. Brockovich?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. Although I'm only so tolerant of that tone in my courtroom, Gilbert is right. Until you can present the evaluation with a sufficient verdict on his frame of mind, I cannot accept your reasoning. Court is excused for a short recess. When we return, I expect your attitude to have subsided, Mr. Gilbert.
As a particularist, I believe that the importance of morality in a situation depends entirely on context, because there are no absolute morals. Shout out to fundamentals of ethics. What I believe to be moral depends on the situation. Since he went into the situation not intending to kill anybody, maybe he shouldn't get the death penalty. However, he did go into it with a weapon on hand, so he had the intention of maybe using the weapon. So for that reason, I believe that we should impose the death penalty.
Pluralism is the coexistence of multiple belief systems in a society. They believe that while they follow their own set of moral guidelines, they have no right to impose those same guidelines on others. I believe that criminal behavior should be dealt with by judicial systems, because who am I to decide others' punishments? So whatever the law states should happen, I agree with, but I have no pressing opinion of my own.
Does the prosecution have any further points before the defense presents their final argument?
We would like to bring up that capital punishment is not the only form of taking a life that is legal. There are people caught up on this issue in particular, with all of these debates and for against it. Well, they bypass these other cases either out of ignorance or maybe hypocrisy.
Preferably today, Mr. Gilbert.
Right, well, these three forms of legal murder today are the killing of a harmful suspect that is intending to flee, capital punishment in 36 states, and justifiable welfare. I would argue that if the defense is basing the sentencing solely on whether it is right to allow laws to permit the taking of human life, they would have to condemn all of these. Even if they promote public safety, it is quite unreasonable to allow for other laws to be practiced if this one is deemed inappropriate. I'm sure all my rural utilitarian fans out there would agree with me.
Those other instances are tolerated, not encouraged. Capital punishment is a set penalty for certain crimes, whereas justifiable warfare and the killing of a harmful suspect are by a chance merely situational.
Well put, Miss Brockovich. You may... All right, we'll take a short break so that some people may use the restroom. Reconvene in 5.
Utilitarianism believes that the best and most moral thing to do in any situation is one that will maximize good or produce the most benefits over disadvantages. Imposing capital punishment would prevent the offender from causing any more harm to the community. Without the death penalty, he could very possibly be let out and cause harm once again. For this reason, although stern, I am with the death sentence.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the final debate before the jury's deliberation.
I'm sure most of you know this, but deliberation is just a fancy way of saying making a decision after careful consideration and thought.
Ms. Brockovich, you may present your final topic.
Thank you, Justice Keegan.
Wait.
A common argument many people make on this debate is that sentencing someone to death saves the state or county the money it would take to house them. Unfortunately, these people fail to do the calculations and present adequate data to back that argument up. I would like to give you the list of information by state, Your Honor. The annual average taxpayer cost to house inmates is $31,286 per inmate. That may seem like a lot of money, and yes, if they are put to death, that money could be saved for the years to come, but most people do not realize that the taxpayers also pay for the case through trial. Cases without death penalty sentencing cost about $740,000, but cases where the death penalty costs an average of $1.26 million. Along with that, until the inmate is actually put to death, maintaining each prisoner costs taxpayers $90,000 more per year than a prisoner in the general population.
You're forgetting reincarceration rates.
Excuse me?
Can you put a price on safety of the public, Ms. Brockovich?
Objection.
Sustained. Gilbert, I have no interest in your little game. Either make a statement or sit back down.
Fine, you claim it's cheaper to house inmates in the general prisons, but if they stay there, there's a high probability that they will be released early due to overcrowding.
Objection. We're dealing with what-ifs, Your Honor.
Overruled, but you need to make your point.
Are we done interrupting? Thank you. A 2014 release by the Bureau of Justice showed that 68% of 405,000 prisoners released in 30 states in 2005 were arrested for a new crime within 3 years of release of the prison, and 77% were arrested within 5 years. Allowing these people the possibility of early release will lead to more damage to their communities and more money from each taxpayer down the line for each new trial on top of their cost of living.
All right, any last comments from the defense? Thank you both.
Altruists seek to do things only for the benefit of others, never for themselves. I am against capital punishment for this man because it would only bring him suffering.
Yeah, whatever. There's always some selfish reason for you doing whatever you do, Mrs. Holier than thou. I'm against the death penalty because when I give my verdict, it'll make me look like a merciful saint. I bet that's the same reason she's doing it too.
Divine command theory follows the commandments of God. A decision is only moral if it is said to have been so by God himself. The sixth commandment states, "Thou shalt not kill." Therefore, killing is a sin and should never be allowed by any means, so I'm against the savage sentencing of capital punishment.
Please fill out your cards at this time and present them to the officer when completed. The court is dismissed for a short recess.
significant other? Because my contacts have your name, but not your number.
Order! Because the jury was not able to come to a unanimous vote, the case will have to be reviewed at a later time. Bring Furman back to his cell. We will be continuing this case starting July 14th. Thank you for all your time. You are hereby dismissed.
In reality, the death penalty was overturned by the Supreme Court due to the 8th and 14th Amendments. William Furman was instead sentenced to life in prison but was given parole in April 1984. He later pleaded guilty to another burglary charge in 2004 and was sentenced to 20 more years in prison. In April 2016, Furman was yet again given parole and is out free today.
We are against capital punishment because though it does have some societal benefits, for example, keeping murderers off the streets who could be doing more harm, it is an immoral practice.
As human beings, we all have an equal value of life, and we shouldn't be able to take that away from somebody or decide who gets to keep it.